Badlands, running to Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Why We Vote. Happy New Year to everybody. The first show of the year, and we've got a banger lined up for you tonight. Joined by the one and only Ashe in America. How you doing, Ashe?
I'm good. I'm doing well. We've got a packed chat. Everybody, please hit that like button for us. Helps us out quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I'm excited. I'm excited and a little nervous about tonight's show. We'll see what happens. It's gonna be I think it's gonna be good.
I am very excited. I do have to say this one thing, and I forgot to say this on Daily this morning, and I feel like such an ass for not saying it. Happy birthday to my younger brother today, but also happy birthday to Christy's grandma, who turns 100 today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Christy's grandma.
100. That's incredible. So yeah, again, guys, we got a great show lined up for you tonight. We are going to be joined by two guests here briefly, but before we get into that, let's get a word from our sponsors right quick, and let's talk about our friends over at mypillow.com.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our biggest Made in America sale ever. We just put huge discounts on products made right here in the USA. MyPillow bed pillows, body pillows, go anywhere pillows, bolster pillows, all made with my patented adjustable fill. Mattresses, mattress toppers, mattress pads, adjustable bed frames, mattress foundations, and so much more. All made right here in the USA. And now we're expanding our USA products beyond just quality sleep. Like the cross I wear every day, now available in both men's and women's. We even have USA-made socks. And are you tired of being tired? Try our new health beverage, Rev 7. Or how about my coffee, the greatest coffee ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to get deep discounts on all these products. Plus, for a limited time, your order ships absolutely free.
All right, mypillow.com, promo code Badlands, and then let's also talk a little bit.
The toppers, everybody. You want and need a MyPillow mattress topper. It will transform your sleep.
I've been wearing the slippers all day because it's a blistering 46 degrees at night down here in South Florida right now. But you want to know how I keep my beard in such meticulous shape, ladies and gentlemen? Let's talk a little bit about soft disclosure. Get you some of that beard oil.
Now that I'm alone, got the close-up. Do you see how awesome my beard looks right now?
I use the beard oil every single day. First thing.
Comes out feeling all silky smooth.
I take the dropper and I manually apply the oil directly
hair.
to my mustache.
Nice and, oh man, I love it.
And then I do drops all throughout the hair, and then I just rub it all in. And then I top it off with the tallow stick on the face.
But I feel like I have to grow a beard just to try this beard oil. It sounds
Do it, Jay.
amazing.
It's all from softdisclosure.com, and the best part about it is you'll be supporting Badlands Media, Annie from Willow and Farms, and basically 3 of Annie's neighbors. So that's 5 total American companies that you'd be supporting with one purchase.
I have been using the Soft Disclosure scentless beard oil every day after the shower. It looks unkempt, but it feels silky smooth. I want to look a little wild and unapproachable. But for the woman I trust, she'll be like, oh, it's actually kind of soft. He is approachable after all. Otherwise, stay away. And Soft Disclosure will help you too with that if that's the very specific vibe you're going for.
That is very specific, yes.
You guys are supporting American businesses when you do that. It's absolutely incredible, and you get a great, great product. Bertrand's description is the best thing ever.
Otherwise, stay away.
and Jatria cannot grow a beard, period. I don't think he's
doing all right. Did you watch
he-
OnlyLands on Friday?
I watched it briefly. I didn't see it.
Not OnlyLands, the New Year's one.
New Year's? No, I did not.
So he started. So he actually did decide to grow a beard so he could try the beard oil. And on Wednesday night, he was on the stream and Baytheater Dave asked him what fungus was growing on his face, but I think he's going to pull it off. I think the beard is going to come in nice and lush and beautiful, and J-Treat's going to show all you bearded mofos
All
up.
right. I will gladly eat my words on that. So softdisclosure.com, promo code Badlands. All right. Tonight's show, we've been talking about this all week. Definitely excited for tonight's show. And I got to say, before we bring on our guest, mad props to our guest for coming on tonight. A lot of respect for this man for being able to come into, the so-called the den of vipers, right? The viper's den, the lion's den. What's that?
You're a viper.
Well, you're coming into unfriendly territory, right? We've talked many times on this show about, the stuff that took place out in his state and other places. And to be honest with you, I'm really excited because this is the first time that we've had somebody that's kind of an election fraud denier on the show, other than Marilyn Marks. And she's not
we had Marilyn on. I'm shocked because we've been burned before about trying to have guests come on and then they bail at the last minute. So I agree with you, mad props. And we were talking to our guest behind the scenes. Seems like a delightful man. So it should be a good conversation. I'm excited about it.
All right. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome to the show the former Maricopa County recorder, Stephen Richer, as well as our longtime friend of the show, Mr. Kevin Moncla. Stephen, how are you doing, sir?
I'm great. I was just thinking to myself how nice your beard looks, and now I know the reason for that.
Yes.
Yeah. Softdisclosure.com, promo code Badlands.
Kevin, how you doing, sir?
All right.
I'm ordering some beard oil as we speak.
We like to hear.
There you go. Promo code Badlands.
Does it regrow hair as well?
You and me both, brother.
The FDA has not approved this statement, but yes. And also the FDA has an allowable amount of maggots in canned goods, so I don't know why we listen to them.
All right. The FDA is going to be coming in and busting Ash for promoting off-label uses of their product.
Yeah.
That is the least.
EC was here, says, I have more hair than Brian, which I think is one of the few people I'm maybe not combined because that is a pretty magnificent beard, but at least on top.
So, Stephen, for our audience that doesn't know we lost Kevin. For our audience that doesn't know who you are, why don't you give them a rundown of who you are?
Sure. I'm currently the CEO of a consulting group called Republic Affairs that's based out of Washington, D.C., and I am a senior fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School at Harvard University, which is why I spent all last year in Boston, Massachusetts, but I'm now back in Phoenix, Arizona in a new office, so reporting in. Actually, this is my first sort of event program from this office, so hopefully it sounds okay. Prior to that, I was the elected Maricopa County recorder. I'm a Republican. I ran against the Democratic incumbent in 2020, the November 2020 election that we're still talking about today. I took office in January of 2021, and I served until I lost my re-election, and I served out the remainder of my term through December 2024, and then in January 2025, I moved into these new roles. Let's see, I'm an attorney. Before that, I was an attorney, business person, from the West, live in Arizona, live in South Phoenix. I'm not from Chicago, like one person asked online. I did go to school twice in Chicago, lived a whole bunch of places in the United States, and they've all been pretty magnificent, but Arizona is the best.
All right. And Kevin, you want to give a quick introduction? You're there you go.
Yes. I started investigating 2020 after 2020. And somehow got sucked into Georgia and such a target-rich environment I've never left. I've since then been hired in several capacities to investigate elections, including the 2022 Kerry Lake race, and continue on in Georgia now.
So yeah, me and Kevin go way back, man, to one morning when I was getting ready to do my show, and I was like, saw this article, and I was like, can I get in touch with this guy? And sure enough, we ended up talking, and we have become pretty good friends ever since then. And it's been an honor being on this journey with you, Kevin, and I'm looking forward to tonight's show. So before we get into the first kind of topic here, and the main topic here. I do want to ask you guys to smash that thumbs up down there if you're watching over on Rumble. If you're watching on YouTube, do the same. And if you're watching on Twitter or X, formerly Twitter, smash the thumbs up and repost it. The heart.
They don't have a thumbs up at Twitter,
Heart.
Brian.
You got me.
It's a heart.
All right. So let's jump into, Stephen, this post that you put up. I think it was, probably a couple weeks ago, December 13th.
Yeah. The hearing, I feel like there was a hearing in early December, and then the Federalist wrote an article around like December 29th or something like that.
No. It was way
22nd?
before that.
Oh, you're right. It was before Christmas. I'm sorry. It was so it was like December 22nd.
Yeah, your
like
post
that.
was the
Brian, can you
21st.
zoom in a little bit
Can I zoom in? Sure.
to the image, yeah.
So when the Federalist wrote an article about the hearing that happened before the Georgia State Election Board, that then launched a whole bunch of social media comments from Donald Trump Jr., from Elon Musk, and Brian, maybe you were talking about it online. I'm sure you were. And so I posted that in response to some of those comments.
I was talking about it online in 2021.
All right. Yeah. No, I mean, a lot of these issues have been issues that have been discussed in previous contexts, and I'm sure you've been part of some of those conversations.
Yeah,
This specific SEB complaint was filed.
Yeah, this
years
specific
ago.
complaint dates back to March of 2022, and it was filed by Kevin as well as our other friend David Cross. And so, Kevin, if you want to add on, if you want to talk about, when you filed the complaint and everything, go for that.
Sure. We filed it in March of 22. It was complementary to another complaint, which detailed the defects of tabulation overall for Fulton County's 2020 election, and was intended to be heard or investigated together. But somehow the Secretary of State put the poll tape issue forward and administratively dismissed the accompanying or corresponding complaint that detailed the tabulation deficiencies, which has since been resubmitted. But the signing of the poll tapes or certification of the poll tapes was the complaint that was heard, independent of the other.
And so, Kevin, this is in addition to, the now famous State Election Board 2023-025. Marjorie Taylor Greene called for a formal investigation into that one back in September. This is, a complaint that you submitted a long time ago. The Secretary of State alleged to investigate that, and then they kind of changed. And I'm just giving some background here, Stephen. They kind of changed the procedures on how complaints are spoken during hearings. You guys were not allowed to offer any rebuttal, any questions, or anything like that during the hearing. It took an exorbitant amount of time for them to actually get to your hearing. I mean, we're talking years on something that it's statutorily required to be heard within like 6 months.
Well, if under a have a complaint, it's supposed to be heard within 60 days. We met all the requisites for a have a complaint. We did not specifically require or request to have a complaint for a couple of reasons, but there is no statutory guideline or requirement that it be heard in a certain amount of time.
Okay. All right. So now that we kind of have the foundation there to the 315,000, Go ahead, Stephen.
Well, so my understanding was that Mr. Cross, David Cross, who I guess is a colleague and friend of some of yours,
yes,
filed a records request at some point in 2023, and that ultimately this hearing stemmed out of some of the materials that were produced pursuant to that records request. Is that right?
Kind of. It was my request.
Okay.
And it was in 2021. To give you a background, we requested the ballot images because our methodology was to recreate the election based on the records. So first we requested the next best thing to the ballots, which was the ballot images, which were at that point public record. Then we found that Fulton County had not preserved any of the ballot images for in-person voting. So all of the ballot images that were counted and produced at the time were destroyed. So then we moved to the tabulator tapes. We requested the tabulator tapes, and we got some, well, not all of the tabulator tapes. We got 138 out of 148 closing tapes and 9 open tapes. And as we're talking now, at the time we thought the tapes were not signed. 138 closing tapes were not signed because they had other copies and they could be signed. Then we found that was not the case. They didn't certify or sign any of them. So that's what yielded the complaint.
So I moving ahead to December 9th, because David was the one who was at the State Board of Elections hearing. And from what I saw, Fulton County was represented by their counsel there. And what they said is that Mr. Cross alleged that they had not signed the 0 tapes and that therefore 315,000 ballots were invalid. And Fulton County said, we don't dispute that. We don't dispute that we did not sign the 0 tapes. And I think that then led to the Federalist article, which then led to some of the social media furor and a conversation, if you will, about what exactly do those 0 tapes mean and what does it mean for the 315,000 ballots that David Cross and others were talking about. Is that fair?
That's fair. I'm just going to switch it around on you. It was the closing tapes that weren't signed. The open tapes were signed, the 9 that we did receive, but we didn't receive the remaining 137 or 138.
Okay, I think they cited a rule that was about 0 tapes. And so maybe that was a little unclear because they were also citing a rule that pertained to election day instead of to early voting.
Well, there was an overall statute that under which the rule was promulgated at the time they adopted the Dominion system in 2020, which was, there's an overarching statute that requires the signing of the official return or certification of the official return, excuse me.
Okay, well, I don't want to get too into the weeds. I don't want to bore Brian.
But to get to your point,
for the audience sake, can one of you explain the 0 tape and a closing tape? What does that mean in terms of the election?
So let's back up a little bit. In 2018, to vote in Georgia, you would go into a voting location, you would mark your selections on a touch screen, and they would be recorded on a digital device. At the end of the night, and at the end of the election, that digital device would be taken to the central facility where it would be uploaded into the county server and it would be aggregated. For the 2020 cycle, Georgia purchased new voting equipment. And what this new voting equipment manufactured by Dominion, these are called ballot marking devices. So you would go into a voting location. You have to be a registered voter to be able to go into a voting location. You would check in on something called a poll pad, which is basically just an iPad that has voter registration information. Then a poll worker would come over, check your ID, make sure you're the person who you say you are, make sure you're the registered voter. Then you'd still go to a touch screen and you'd mark all the candidates. So in 2020, maybe you marked Donald Trump and Mike Pence for your candidate. And then instead of what it did in 2018, in 2020, it then would print a paper ballot. So the paper ballot would have all of your selections on it. And then you would make sure that that's okay. And then you would go and you would feed it into the tabulator that is at the voting location. And this was true for early voting because Georgia allows you to vote in person early. And it was true for election day voting. Now, at the beginning of early voting, what the election workers are supposed to do is they're supposed to print a 0 tape. And the 0 tape basically just says that no ballots have been tabulated on this scanner. So this scanner is just something that you put it in, it goes through, probably all of you have done this, and it scans it, and it records to its internal memory all of the results, but it doesn't show any of that. All it shows on an external LED section of the tabulator is how many ballots is tabulated. So ideally, the number of ballots that are run through the scanner, it should then say the scanner has read 525 ballots, and therefore the memory card should also have collected the information from 525 ballots. And so the zero tape is what you print off before you begin the election to make sure that it doesn't have any any demo ballots, any mock ballots, any ballots from previous elections that have been recorded. And Georgia rules promulgated by Secretary Raffensperger say that 3 people should sign off on that zero tape to confirm that there are in fact 0 ballots that have been scanned.
And why? Why should 3? Why is it important? Why can't just 1, right? Just mark your initials on it. Like, why is it important that 3 people attest to what's on that zero tape?
You know, I would imagine 3, just so that in elections, we always like to work in pairs. We always like to work in teams. So it sort of has this built-in idea that people are sort of watching each other, so that it's never just one person taking in action.
So it's validation. It is true attestation. You want multiple people in the state of Georgia. They've said 3 people to attest to and because that's important, right? The zero tape is important to show that there's not something on there before votes. Is that fair?
Right. So it's important to it's good hygiene for an election just to make sure that your memory drive within that scanner doesn't have anything from, again, either testing the equipment beforehand or from a previous election or something like that.
Okay.
So
Kevin, go ahead, Brian.
Just one of the other things that a zero tape also shows that's pretty important, making the comparison between the zero tape and the closing tape, is the protective counter, and showing. So the protective counter is like a speedometer on your car. It only increments
Odometer.
Odometer, excuse me, not speedometer. Odometer on your car, and it only increments up, and it's a continuous cycle. So no matter how many ballots for every election, it has the total number of ballots that have been run through that machine since the beginning of its creation, since the very first time it was utilized. And that is supposed to be used with the zero tape to the closing tape to ensure that the protective counter shows the same increment as the number of ballots counted on that particular election. So that's also on the zero tapes. But go ahead, Kevin.
Did you? No, I agree. I agree with that. That assessment.
So that's how it's supposed to work, right? And that's why I wanted to make sure you both agree, Kevin and Stephen. You both agree that that's what's supposed to happen.
Yes, and I think the rule is 183-1-14-.027 that is was promulgated by Secretary Raffensperger, and it was to have 3 people sign off on this zero tape.
To attest.
Okay. Yeah. I agree, but there's also the statute that exists, which is 21-483H, and that is specifically under Part 5, precincts using optical scan voting equipment, which this clearly is.
And I've got that pulled up right here. The official returns of the votes cast on ballots at each polling place shall be printed by the tabulating machine. The returns thus prepared shall be certified and promptly posted. The ballots spoiled, defective, and invalid ballots and returns shall be filed and retained as provided by law.
So agreed. I just want to distinguish, that's not a zero tape. That's at the end of the election that's posted to the door.
But right. So you don't, I think that perhaps the zero tapes came up during that SEB meeting, but the complaint and the issue was 138 poll closing tapes were unsigned and uncertified. The 9 zero tapes were actually signed.
I'm not going to dispute with what was in your complaint, obviously.
Kevin. No. I'm talking about the one that was heard.
I wrote my Twitter post responding to what was at that hearing, and then also what was captured in the Federalist, which was talking about, again, these zero tapes. But I think, Brian, where you're anticipating this going is at the end of the night, election workers in Georgia also keep a log, so that when you close tabulation for one day of early voting, the odometer says where you left it, and then when you open it again the next morning, the odometer is in the same place. so that if we on a, say, Thursday night of early voting, this tabulator has scanned 537 ballots, and we put that on the log and we're all good with that, and there's going to be no more scanning tonight. Then when we come to the voting location the next morning and we open up the polls and we say we're going to start scanning again, then it should still be 537. That odometer shouldn't have changed from when we close the poll to when we open the poll the next morning. Does that make sense?
It does, but the open tape also identifies the machine by serial number. And in Georgia, when you open the polls for early voting, which was on October 12th, they keep them open for the duration of early voting up until October 30th. So it's one long 3-week.
Right.
And
so then, based off of this, a number of people said, well, if those zero tapes weren't signed, and Fulton County acknowledges them that many of them were not signed in violation of this rule, then the corresponding 315,000 some ballots are therefore irrevocably broken and are potentially fraudulent, and therefore the whole election should be decertified. And that's where I say I don't make that jump. I agree that Fulton County should have signed those zero tapes, but I don't agree that the proper remedy is to toss out all of those votes by Georgians. And I also don't agree that that's the only way that we could have confirmed that those tabulators were only scanning legitimate ballots.
Stephen, what kind of law did you practice before you got into politics? No, I'm a genuine question.
No, I did mergers and acquisitions. So
Okay.
buying and selling, so private equity, buying and selling companies.
So in criminal law, if you were prosecuting a case and there was a submission of evidence from a crime scene or something along those lines, and there was no signature from the custodian, the officer into the, the custodian of the evidence locker, what would happen to that evidence?
I'm not quite sure I follow, but in this case, well, one, this isn't a criminal statute, so that's obviously important. And then two, this rule does carry with it certain penalties, and the Georgia State Election Board has now referred this matter to the Georgia Attorney General, and I guess the Georgia Attorney General will decide whether or not to pursue those penalties, but they're civil penalties, so they're things like a fine.
Well, I have to push back on the subject matter of the SCB meeting or the complaint.
Please.
The complaint is 2022-115, and that complaint is for 138 uncertified poll closing tapes.
Yes. And the Federalist does mention both zero tapes and closing tapes in their article. But so before we get into it, Stephen, does that change if you knew it was the closing tapes that were not signed by 3 witnesses, and the zero tapes?
Well, the zero tapes were signed. The 9 zero tapes.
Not the 9 that you have. The rest were not provided. So there's
obviously there's a bit of, which is disappointing. There's a lack of clarity, I think, among all of the parties, because it seemed like what Fulton County was saying that they acknowledged that they didn't sign was in fact those zero tapes. Maybe they were just acknowledging more broadly. Kevin, if you don't mind, can you share, just so I make sure we're on the same page, the closing posting, which I understand has to be posted to the door, and it's the actual results, not just the number of ballots that have been tabulated or scanned, but the actual results from those paper ballots that were scanned at the voting location.
Well, that's interesting. You're absolutely right that normally for in-person voting, you would post them on the door like they do in Arizona. For early voting in Georgia, they have to be made available to the public, but there is no quote unquote door to post them on. I don't think they had a mechanism to provide them to the public until we requested them.
Okay. So If appropriate at this point, I'll sort of take you down my logic in how I was thinking of this. Is that fair? So again, agreed. Fulton County, like the rules are the rules. I understood them to not follow all of the rules. That their attorney acknowledged at least something. You know, as Kevin and I are sort of piecing out here, we're not 100% sure what part of that they're acknowledging that they failed on, but they failed to sign some type of thing. But so on the zero tapes, we said zero tapes are important. Ash said these are important to make sure that we know that we haven't tabulated ballots already on these scanners, that we haven't scanned test ballots, and that they're not being stored within that memory device. I agree. That is one important thing, but it's not the only check for that. And so I wrote this.
Hang on a second, because the zero tapes come up because in your post that we're reviewing, you cite them as a proof point for why this was done lawfully in Georgia. The reality is the zero tapes, I think, Kevin, you said 9 of them exist. The rest of them have not been produced for 131, 141 tabulators. They don't exist. They have not been provided.
Yeah.
9 of them exist, and those are signed. The tapes that are unsigned are the closing tapes. And nobody's confused about that here, I don't think. Well, Kevin, are you confused about that?
I'm not.
Okay. Yeah.
I guess I am, just because that's what they talked about in the
closing tapes are unsigned, and the attestation is important because, like you said, it's a proof point for why we've been doing this with integrity. We have 3 signatures. We can show you the zero tapes. We can show you the bookending of the election. It's open clean and it's closed clean, and we can show you the record. Only in Fulton County we can't, and we keep getting gaslit about it.
Well, I hope I can tell you that I'm not trying to gaslight you. So apologies if that's how I'm coming across. But maybe this will help. Stepping back, what is it that we hope to prevent with these receipts, if you will?
Okay, so in your post, and like I said in the introduction, I did investigate the 2022 Cary Lake election. And I did receive all of the poll tapes, and the open tape and the closed tape matched, and the number of ballots that incremented was accurate. It moved the protective counter appropriately. In Georgia, we don't have any of that for early voting. And you mentioned scanner recap sheets. There are no scanner recap sheets that are required during the process at various points to check the number of ballots cast, like before the tape's printed. You're supposed to check the seals to make sure the same memory card is in the tabulator at the time of before you print the tape. And if it doesn't match either one of those, you're supposed to stop, alert Secretary of State or the county election board, and you're supposed to reconcile it. Another check is the number of voters who cast a ballot at that location. It's supposed to be reconciled against the number before the tape is printed, and there's no numbered list of voters that were available at the time the polls closed. So you have basically no zero tapes, no recap sheets, no ballot images, and then tabulator closing tapes that don't bear the serial number or protective counter number of the tabulator that actually scanned the ballots, which is a whole nother conversation, but and they're uncertified. So for all of early voting, we have essentially 0 records. And I know this probably better than everybody on the planet, save 5 people, but there is literally no record of early voting and 315,000 votes.
So amazing that you've dug into Maricopa County in 2022 as well. So if I may, I think what we hope to achieve out of these receipts is that we make sure that, one, somebody didn't bring in ballots from unauthorized voters and put them through the scanners, or 2, that we didn't double scan ballots that were legitimate.
Well, double scanning is probably not even I mean, it's not even on my radars for early voting because it's, the ballots are contained in the box after you scan it successfully. But yeah, there's no basic election accounting. There is no quote unquote auditable record as required by HAVA and common sense logic.
Hang on a second too, because you're shifting to the intent, right? Like why is it that we need these mechanisms? And I just want to say, doesn't matter, because in Georgia statute 21-2 587, frauds by poll officials this is subsection 8, failure to return to return to the officials prescribed by this chapter following any primary or election, any keys of a voting machine, ballot box, general or duplicate return sheet, tally paper, oaths of poll officers, affidavits of electors or others, record of assisted voters, numbered list of voters, electors list, voter certificate, spoiled or canceled ballots, ballots deposited, written or affixed in or upon a voting machine, DRE, electronic ballot marker, or tabulating machine memory cards, or any certificate or any other paper or record required to be returned under this chapter shall be guilty of a felony, and upon conviction thereof shall be sentenced to imprisonment for not less than 1 nor more than 10 years, or to pay a fine not to exceed $100,000 or both. And so if the documents were, if the election was not run in accordance with the statute and there was a clerical error, right, and people are like, oh, we just, we forgot to sign 138 of the 148 tapes. Whoops, we forgot to do it. So, that's unfortunate, but it was just a clerical error. Why do we have these laws, first of all? And two, because my personal belief is that we have these kinds of laws to make the public feel real good about elections. But when it comes down to it and we find that these things aren't followed and there's all manner of violations and we can't actually verify the accuracy of the election, we get all sorts of things like, well, what are we trying to accomplish with these receipts? And we can tell through a risk limiting audit that it's totally fine. So don't worry about the fact that the majority of the poll tapes weren't signed. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of where, so the law, if Kevin's research is correct, and this record of there is no verifiable auditable record for early voting in Georgia in 2020, who goes to prison for the felonies under the statute?
Yeah, so agree that laws are meant to be followed. Agree that also laws are meant to inspire confidence in the process. Per that hearing on the 9th, that was not the statute that they cited. And so I think that they're instead talking about this rule. But I am not here disputing, and Fulton County was not disputing at that December 9th hearing, that they failed to adhere to that rule. Again, they're talking about the rule. They would dispute that it's about the statute that you read. But the reason I was talking about the intent of that rule is because we want to know, like, is there any other way that we can make sure that this process was okay, acknowledging that they failed to sign that receipt?
Right. So I understand your perspective. It seems like a gotcha. They didn't sign, they didn't check the box, they didn't check the first, the right box, or
I hope
that's not it.
I hope I take it more seriously than that. It should have been done, and it's
no, but I mean, I understand where you're coming from. If it was a mere oversight or a clerical misstep and we had all of the supporting records, you wouldn't even be talking to me. I wouldn't have bothered.
So what I'm saying is, one, there are still ways to make sure that the number of voters who showed up, showed identification, and cast a ballot is the same number of ballots that were scanned by the scanners. And two, the appropriate recourse under Georgia law and federal law for Fulton County's failure to sign these sheets is not to throw out the 315,000 ballots. That is less exciting to me than making sure that we had a way to reconcile who checked in versus how many ballots. Because if we have more ballots scanned than we have legitimate Georgia registered voters who checked in, then we have a problem.
We have 20,000 as it sits right now, according to the Secretary of State's own records.
Well, I dispute that. I
don't.
Of
course, I know you do, and I'm just. I know you wouldn't accept it otherwise, unless I gave you evidence. But I'm just saying, just speaking. There is no record for what's required in Georgia is a numbered list of voters. Everybody who checks in is supposed to sign a document, and they're supposed to be able to tell you that John Smith voted at Adams Park Library on Thursday. They don't know who voted in their own polling locations.
Well,
And
so I'm
Go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
So let's say that we obviously don't have confidence in that. Kitsco, is there voter ID in Arizona? Yes, if you show up to a voting location in Arizona, you have to show photo ID. Let's say, so was it right that these scanners scanned 150 ballots if we don't have the appropriate documentation on these zero tapes and on the post-election tapes? How else can we do that? And so why I wrote that Twitter post and then why I wrote this article for the Dispatch was talking about other ways that you can reconcile those counts. So for instance, when you show up and you check in on a poll pad as a registered voter, it keeps track of that. When the ICX machine prints off a ballot, it keeps track of that. So I was saying that even if you don't have those zero tapes, there's a way to make sure, okay, we had 150 voters check in, and then we had 150 ballots that we ran through the scanners. Moreover, if you're worried about having double scanned certain ballots or having voters check in, fewer voters check in than ballots that were ultimately tabulated by Fulton County. The amazing thing about the 2020 election was that at the behest of probably people like Kevin and Brian and Ash, Georgia did multiple retabulations, both a hand count tabulation and a scanner tabulation again. So if you had double scanned, if Fulton County had accidentally double scanned, say 500 ballots or 5,000 ballots, then that would be revealed in the, sorry, I'll just finish here. That would be revealed in the post-election recounts. Yeah, sorry, Brian.
6,691 is how many ballots they double and triple scanned in the hand count to get the number to match. And it still didn't match, but to get it close.
And that was by the governor. The governor, my friend Joe Rossi, who was my co-complainant in 025, documented the 6,691 ballots that don't exist that were added to the total of the hand count. And the governor recreated his work, wrote a 40-page report and submitted it to the SCB for further investigation. It had ended in a consent agreement that Fulton County did make the errors. Long story short.
No explanation how it happened.
Well, they said it was data entry error, but it wasn't data entry error because the batch tally sheets matched the data entry. But anyway, they padded the hand count with 6,691 ballots. From the absentee ballots alone, we've since found 13,000 more errors in the when comparing the hand count totals to the batch tally sheets. The batch tally sheets to the tabulator tapes in Fulton County.
Yeah,
And then on the recount, we found 3,930 ballots which were scanned and counted twice, which is part of that 025 complaint that Brian was discussing. But there is no basic accounting at the most primitive level, and even Marilyn Marks will tell you this.
Yep.
That there is none.
So we talked about before. Brian brought up a criminal law example. Stephen, I want you to think about in M&A due diligence. You're doing due diligence. You get past close. We're doing post merger integration, that's my background. Before this life, you get to the point and you learn that the organization that you were acquiring or merging with actually didn't have the records that they claimed that they were going to have, that their assertions and things were fraud, and you didn't catch it no matter how many toll gates and process checks you had in the due diligence phase. Yeah. You didn't catch it, but you had. Where do you go from there?
So that's actually, though, I hadn't thought of it. I think that's an amazing example. And so if we had an agreement that says we're purchasing this and this is everything we believe to be true about the company that we're purchasing, and then we find out that something is a little bit off from what we thought we were purchasing, then there would be a materiality question as to whether or not the sale would be nullified. Is it material to the agreement? And if we disputed that, that would ultimately go to a judge, and a judge would decide whether or not that was, whether or not that was material. But if they listed something like, we have 67 contracts with our customers, and it turned out that they had, 30 contracts with customers, but otherwise the revenue was the same, then I think a judge would rule that that wasn't material, and I think the acquisition would still go through.
And
Well,
what if you
Fulton
found
County-
those? Hang on one second. What if you found those misrepresentations and falsehoods by the company you were acquiring? What if you found that stuff before you closed the deal? Would you close the deal and go forward with it?
We'd have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
So Fulton County is the
Totally.
Enron of
Well, I know you're a Texan, so I know that hits hard. And look, I know that Secretary Raffensperger, the Georgia State Board of Elections, were not terribly complimentary of how Fulton County administered the 2020 election. And I know that Fulton County, as was evident in that December 9th hearing, had some mea culpas. My only point is that there are, again, other ways that you can determine that the number of people who checked into the voting location matches the number of ballots that were tabulated. Again, you all point out it didn't. You're right. They double counted some, and that was revealed in some post-election audits. They got, as you mentioned, Kevin, a consent decree. They needed to clean up their practices. Happily, it didn't have a race-altering impact on the election.
We don't know.
We don't know.
Because we're talking about one county and half the margin. We're talking about they found.
But wait, that consent agreement failed in one major way, and it did not correct the results for the hand count. The official results still reflect 6,691 fictitious ballots and votes for President of the United States.
So I actually have a question for you, Kevin, and it was sort of teed up by Ash just then. Why was this just lodged? Ash, you prompted me to ask, why was this just lodged against Fulton County? How many counties are there in Georgia?
Oh,
There's a bunch, right?
It wasn't.
This is just what's popular. We've done this for many counties in Georgia. It's not exclusive to Fulton. Fulton's just one of the
And
worst.
also not just in 2021, this complaint was filed.
No, it's a very good question too. Mr. Richard, the state election board is run with the, let's say, cooperation of the Secretary of State's office, in that it provides all administrative support and function. For a long time, the secretary was by default the chair, right? So that has been separated for whatever reason by the legislature, and the state election board is I guess trying to stay on its own. And the growing pains have the state election board dependent upon the Secretary of State's office still. So all of complaints have gone through the Secretary of State's office, and in upside down fashion, the Secretary of State decides which complaints get heard or investigated, not the state election board. And that's changing, but that's why.
And actually, Brian sent me a link and he said, hey, I'm sure you've heard of this, but that is another news item, which is that the Georgia State Election Board in November of 2024 had subpoenaed Fulton County for additional materials, all the materials pertaining, or at least lots of the materials pertaining to the 2020 presidential election. They disputed that. Fulton County moved to quash, and just last week, the Superior Court state judge said, no, this is within the authority of the Georgia State Election Board to put this subpoena on Fulton County, and therefore Fulton County needs to respond. And so the judge gave Fulton County until January 7th, which I guess is Wednesday of this coming week, to itemize how much all those materials will cost to produce. And so, yes, I think that the state election board has developed some authority independent, I guess, of the secretary's office. I'm not exactly sort of sure of the history of that or how it works. Yeah.
So, Mr. Richter, as an attorney, if a board is making a decision Wouldn't that board have to take a vote?
So I can't remember whether it was Brian and Ash on this show previously,
Or you might have seen my post because I'm very open
maybe
about
I
it.
came across your post, but clearly at least one of you thinks that that something shouldn't have been done only on the authorization of the chairperson, but that it required a full vote of the 5-member board. Is that right?
Correct. The Open Meetings Act and the bylaws of the election board both require an open meeting and a vote. Even if it's an executive session, it has to be repeated in public, et cetera. So several decisions were made by that chair without the board, such as hiring an outside counsel, spending $300,000 in taxpayer funds, and filing lawsuits against the state election board without the knowledge or consent of the board.
I'm afraid I don't know.
I understand. But that's the problems that we continue to endure, because the state election board is unfortunately represented by the attorney general. The attorney general's client is the secretary of state. So when there's a conflict, the state election board loses.
Okay.
So I want to go back to the 315,000 Fulton County ballots here, because, and I have people texting me throughout the show, and the Federalist does not specifically say zero tapes. They say tabulating tapes a couple times throughout there. And I would assume it doesn't explicitly say closing tapes, but I would assume tabulating tapes would more allude to closing tapes rather than zero tapes, which show no tabulation or supposed to show no tabulation. I do want to just real quick read another text. I asked permission from Marilyn Marks, who says, Stephen is assuming that normal documents existed in Fulton and in Georgia in particular. It is harder for people in other states to accept how screwed up Georgia is. Seems unbelievable to them. And I really think that that's a factual statement when people understand how bad or see how bad Georgia actually is, specifically Fulton County in this case, and how much is not. So the 350,000 tapes, the law in Georgia, or excuse me, the election rule in Georgia is that when you're done with the advance voting, you were supposed to bring the tabulators back to a central location. In the case of Fulton County, it would be the English Street warehouse. Once they're there, all of those tabulators, 148 tabulators, are supposed to have the seals inspected, the memory cards, make sure nothing was tampered with, and then ensure that print a closing tape, and then ensure off the tabulator. And this is specific in the rule, specifically off the tabulator that the ballots were cast on, and you're supposed to compare that with the zero tape. And if everything matches up, you're good to go. The problem was, Stephen, and this is again through Kevin's work, in Fulton County, all of the memory cards were removed from those 16 tabulators and scanned exclusively through 16 completely unrelated tabulators at the English Street warehouse, which, and again, this is just purely circumstantial. The English Street warehouse at that time was occupied by at least 10 Dominion employees who were being paid $2,000 a day. We have these invoices through FOIA, because of a COVID outbreak in the warehouse. So you have a lot of problems here just beyond unsigned poll tapes. You have memory cards being removed from the tabulators that they're, by rule, supposed to be, printed out on, and moved to completely separate tabulators. And if you really want, we can get into how none of these tabulators were logic and accuracy tested.
And 10 of them are missing.
And 10 of the tabulators are completely missing.
Yeah, so I obviously broke off just a segment of this, and I don't want to suggest that that was the end of David Cross's interest in this, or the end of what he thought that Fulton County did wrong. If I can be so forward as to request a second date, then maybe we can go through in a future program some of those other allegations.
That's very fair.
What I thought and hoped to convey in my article with the Dispatch, and in probably less refined format on Twitter, surprise, surprise, was that again, we have other ways other than these tapes of making sure that the number of voters who come to a voting location, the number of ballots printed, matches or doesn't match with the amount of ballots tabulated. And even if Fulton County wasn't doing all of those reconciliations, then state could do those reconciliations after. And thanks to Marilyn for chiming in. That's certainly a name I've seen in past litigation.
Stephen, how familiar are you with the Curling v. Raffensperger case in Georgia?
I read the district court opinion even from Judge Totenberg.
Well, so before we get into, because I was there, I flew up to Georgia. I was there for every day of the trial, except the.
Are we moving off the tabulator tapes?
No.
Okay.
Well,
I
think he just conceded that the tabulator, he would have to come back.
I thought you were asking for a second date and more time to talk about all of these things. My question is actually specifically related to the signing of the tabulator tape.
Oh, go ahead then.
So, Kevin, before we went on air, I had asked you. So, and I want to understand, Steve, your perspective as well. The tabulator tapes, after they're signed, right, per the process as it's laid out, you have those tapes. They're signed. It's my understanding, and Kevin, correct me if I have this wrong, in Georgia, that there is a gate that those signed tabulator tapes, there's a gate that they're required, you're required to have those before you move forward in the process with the rest of reconciling and tabulating, calculating the election, reporting the results, all of these things, that the tabulator tapes, the signed tabulator tapes, you can't, per the process, you can't go forward in the process until you have that piece. And they, in Georgia and Fulton County specifically, blew past that gate despite the fact that they didn't have signed tabulator tapes. So from a legal standpoint, doesn't that get beyond clerical error when you have a requirement and you're kind of ignoring it to move forward and certify election anyway?
Well, there's like 3 or 4. I mean, first, before you print the tape, you're supposed to compare the seal on the machine and the serial number to that which was recorded on the recap sheet, which has been the daily log that's maintained by a human being throughout the course of early voting. So you're supposed to consult the recap sheet, compare it to the machine. If the seals don't match or the serial numbers don't match, you're supposed to stop. Alert the Secretary of State's office or the Superintendent of Elections, which is the board, until it can be reconciled. Then you go to turn the machine on. You're supposed to compare the counter numbers on the machine to that of the recap sheet. And if they don't match, you're supposed to stop and reconcile it. That's before you print the tape. These machines, none of them could have survived to first check the seals, because there were no seals. And second, they couldn't check the recap sheet or consult the recap sheet for the numbers or the number list of voters to even do a sanity check, if you will.
Did you guys file suit on this? I know that one of the his last name begins with an F.
Favorito, Garland
Favorito filed suits on some other issues. But did you guys file suit on this particular issue in the immediate aftermath of the 2020 election?
No.
Okay.
It would be a waste of money.
I'm sorry.
It would be a waste of money. The judges kick them out on standing no matter what. They're just like, they find some procedural ground to dismiss the case, and that's the way it goes. Garland Favorito's case to review the ballots got kicked back from the Georgia Supreme Court in 2022, remanded back down. It's been 1,080 days that he's been waiting for that case to be assigned for his case from 2021 to review the physical paper ballots. Over 1,000 days. They just don't want to look at this.
So I'm not looking off into space. I'm trying to find out. I pulled the cases from the 2020 election, and there was at least one of them that had an evidentiary hearing on one of the issues. I'll have to go back to that one, but I was just curious because ultimately, sort of to Ash's point about drawing parallels with the legal system, is like ultimately the way in which we resolve this isn't through Twitter fights, but is through either election litigation or post hoc criminal violations if someone were to have committed a criminal violation always. And I guess one of the things that I always ask people is like, if you believe that's there, then take it to court.
Well, I think we're just waiting on them to build a new jail to have the capacity.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Is that I mean, I have no idea. I know that Georgia's a big place, but I hope for your criminal justice system that you guys have enough holding places.
So the one thing, Stephen, that I wanted to tie the curling case into what you were saying about there's ways to reconcile this, et cetera, et cetera. You know, one of the things that came up in the Curling v. Raffensperger case, which, by the way, talking about procedural grounds, after 7 years or however long it was, and then a year of the judge, you know, deliberating, that case was dismissed on standing after a trial. And then after a year since the trial was over, the judge dismissed it on standing.
Yeah, probably $30 million invested in that case.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
yes.
let's take what was at issue in that curling case. And so, as I mentioned, in 2018, Georgia just had no paper trail. It just recorded everything digitally. In 2020, the voting machines would print a paper ballot that had all of the candidates you selected on it. You could make sure that that's right, but
You couldn't make sure.
You couldn't make sure. It's impossible to make sure that that was right.
You could make sure that the candidates were printed as you selected them. I'll get to the QR bit in here. It also has a QR code, and that QR code has your selections embedded in it, such that when you go to the scanner and you scan that in, what the scanner is scanning in this instance isn't the names of the candidates that you selected, but it is in fact the QR code. And
exactly right.
Aggregates those. And so what I say to anyone, and in Arizona, of course, we had a lot of people who were concerned about hacking and about vote flipping and other allegations regarding the Dominion tabulation equipment that we used in Arizona as well. I always say the beautiful thing about paper ballots is that you always have an immutable, auditable paper trail. And so you can take reports from how machines read the ballot, and then you can have humans go through and you can make sure that the machines were reading the ballots as they were actually marked, such that even if the QR code was somehow misembedded, that would hopefully be revealed in a post-election hand count audit.
How?
Yeah.
How do you verify this when
so let's say you had 100 ballots.
No. I like, I'm not talking, it's kind of a rhetorical question, because we just now, you know, a couple weeks ago got permission, because we need permission from a judge.
In other words, the ballots are a unicorn.
Okay,
I thought you were talking about Stephen, this is the lie that we are told, because this is their talking point. Oh, well, there's always a paper ballot audit trail, right? There's a paper ballot that you can audit. You can always audit the paper ballots, but you can't get to the paper ballots. And you can say, well, they gave you the ballot images. Well, yeah, they gave us the ballot images for machine count 2. Machine count 1s were deleted. You know, and like Kevin was saying earlier, there's no ballot images for the advanced voting. And one of the key things in that Curling v. Raffensperger case, which should be the end of all voting machines, is when Halderman took a $10 CAC card and was able to hack the vote and show the judge, hey, look, I voted for Thomas Jefferson. It says Thomas Jefferson, but when I run it through the tabulator, the QR code says George Washington. That should be the end of the machines, whether or not it was used. The fact that it has that capability, it should be done.
Brian, you had to mention Alex Halderman. You know, you got to give me like another 2 hours.
I've been trying to get Alex Halderman on this show. I've offered him $5,000 cash to come on.
I tried to chase him down at the Lindell trial just to invite him to come on the show, but he was always surrounded by like 15 attorneys.
Excuse me, for the record, I'm getting $0 and Alex Halderman gets $5,000.
We've never paid anybody to come on a guest. Brian just offers people that will definitely not show up anyway.
Okay.
You should have held out longer, Stephen.
Well,
I will never pay a guest to come on for a conversation.
In fact, I would take you guys out to drinks if you got drinks after this.
So I am curious to your response to that, though, in terms of how we're supposed to reconcile this. Are you familiar with the Cart Candula, speaking of Halderman, his grad students at DEF CON in 2019 that were able to hack ballot images so that they literally changed the hand marking on it faster than the scanner can save the ballot image itself?
So let's accept the premise that all machines are hackable. I think probably everyone accepts that premise. And so that's why you should never have a system, at least in 2026 or any year prior to 2026, that is simply, let's turn on the machines, put the ballots through, and just assume that the machines will get it right. Again, if there were any sort of manipulation in the machine coding, so if somebody was able to break the physical security preventions and to get all the bipartisan poll workers to turn away and to turn off the cameras that are filming this while tabulating, you would still have a stack of paper ballots, and the machine report would say, I read these this way, but when humans go through and hand count those again, they would say, no, 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 why did the machines read them this way? They should have read them this way. And so that would reveal any sort of digital manipulation or physical manipulation of the tabulation machines. Now, I get your point, Brian, about like, you guys say we can touch the paper ballots, but we can't. I think the response to that would be, well, the whoever does it in Georgia, in Arizona, there's a bipartisan teams that are put forward by the counties that do the hand count audit. And then, yes, in Arizona, for instance, you can't just request the paper ballots and I get them. I think Georgia has a similar law, although I guess that's going to be disputed, and whether or not the Georgia State Board of Elections is able to get all the physical paper ballots from Fulton County, I guess will be an item of interest in the coming weeks.
Well, it is, in Georgia, they're now public record per se, but
sorry, the physical ballots are public record, or the images of the ballots?
You can get the ballots you can inspect the ballots themselves, and you can have them imaged at 600 DPI as of last year.
Okay, I don't quite see how the paper ballots could be public record, because only one person could request them. Like if Brian requested them and then Ash wanted them too, but like Brian already.
No, I'm not saying you
so
can
you
take
can go
them.
to the
You can
office
just
and
go
look
look
at
at them.
Yeah, you go to the office and look at them. Yeah.
Take a picture with them.
Yeah, go back to your point about, like, I encourage you to take it to court, or if there's criminal violations, then it should be addressed through the criminal courts. Completely agree with you. A lot of people have tried. From a criminal standpoint, though, you need somebody who's going to bring criminal charges. And one of the problems that we run into, Stephen, is that with highly technical matters, we've heard, if I've heard it one time, I've heard it 1,000. You're not an elections expert, right? There's this category of expertise that is deferred to by the courts. The court is going to err on the side of listening to the government experts when it comes to matters of elections, the government experts that are running elections, right? That their points of view are going to take precedent. And what we see from the government repeatedly within the states, certainly in Georgia, my state in Colorado, your state in Arizona, is that we see a level of obstruction of, oh, this just can't be happening. It's just partisan nonsense. It's just political election. You guys just have hurt feelings because you lost the election. So we're not even going to entertain this. And at best we'll get is, well, mistakes were made and we made some process improvements and we hired a third party to come in and audit us. Yeah, it's my brother's firm, but it's fine. He came in and audited us and they said that we're fine and we're going to put, a few process changes in place. We've seen this over and over and over again in the states where there is a level of obstruction coming from the government, so we can never get it to court. Yeah. We see Senate subpoenas being defied. We see all manner of obstruction from government entities that don't want transparency into the way elections are run. We can't ever get it to court. We certainly can't get it to criminal violations when you're accusing the government of the criminal conduct.
Well, and we have I don't know if you've heard, but Fulton County has a DA by the name of Fannie Willis, so she would be a bit conflicted with all of those. And then there's the Attorney General, like I said, and that's the two with jurisdiction over.
Sorry, and you don't have I don't know the Attorney General very well. You're not a believer in him as a man of law and order?
No, I'm not. By conflict, he represents the Secretary of State. So The problem is that he's forcibly representing the state election board in issues like this. For example, enforcing, a subpoena that's over a year old, filed by unauthorized folks who committed a fraud upon the court. So no, I don't have any faith in him because all he's done, I don't think he's prosecuted one election case in the past decade.
Okay, so do you have any confidence in so there were federal contests on these ballots that we're talking about. Do you have confidence in the new FBI director or in the new Attorney General of the United States?
I have confidence in folks that are working for those folks, which is why the Department of Justice is now involved. I think they're suing for the records as well.
Looks like Ash, you were going to say something.
Well, I don't understand the relevance of the question. Why I shouldn't have our election integrity should not be required. It should not rely upon whether or not I like and have confidence in the DOJ. Comes down to the fruit we've seen, Stephen, and we haven't seen fruit that leans towards justice. We've seen fruit of obstruction.
Yeah, and I would simply point out that, guys, maybe you haven't seen the criminal prosecutions. Not because everyone's a rotten apple, not because every attorney general, state and federal, not because every local prosecutor stinks, but maybe because there's no criminal violation.
Well, I don't think anybody said, there are definitely criminal violations. I don't think anybody here is trying to put anybody in jail. We're trying to fix it.
I couldn't, yeah.
With a couple of exceptions of personal.
That was a super weird jump, though, because we just jumped to, well, you're not seeing a bunch of arrests. We're actually talking about real criminal legal violations. I just read you the criminal statute of frauds by poll workers. We can show they've admitted that those tapes weren't signed. So they've admitted to felonies, 315,000 felonies. Actually, if we apply the Tina Peters standard of justice, it's 315,000 felonies we're looking at, with 1 to 10 years for each one and $100,000 and or for each one, which we're just saying was a clerical error, and it's totally fine. But when we want to press the law button and we want to get real technical and real specific about the statutes, usually when the politics run the other way, then it's totally, we're all down. And Tina Peters in prison 8 years and 3 months of her 9-year sentence is for making a misrepresentation. How many misrepresentations, Stephen, have been made in the pursuit of obstructing this issue in Fulton County?
Yeah, so Ash, I just want to be clear that I think the Fulton County attorney would say that they acknowledged not violations of that statute that has the criminal penalty. Now, you feel that they did, but I think what they were acknowledging at
that's like there's no evidence of election fraud but also we haven't looked, right? It's like they violated the law, but the attorney hasn't, the attorney general hasn't brought that law violation, so it doesn't exist.
I just want people to understand what Fulton County thinks it was acknowledging.
Sure, Fulton County has been lying for years, but sure.
Yeah, Fulton County agreed that they didn't sign the tapes because they didn't want anyone or providing any further cause to look into the records of Fulton County.
And then Ash, to the other part about it's been dismissed and everyone's just said sort of there's technical expertise here that you don't have. I'll sort of tell you my experience is that describes me for probably the last year and a half of my time in office. I hope that the first, especially 2 years in office, that I was not as you described and that I would hear that and hopefully respond to that. I think I'm back on that track now because I've had some time away and have, been able to return to myself. I will say that from the standpoint of some election officials, it feels like you've been ground down for a number of years and accused of a whole lot of things. And so I think what you're witnessing is, at best, a lack of patience at this point, and at worst, a more dismissive tone, which I'm sad to say that probably sometimes I was a little brusque in my assessment of things. What about Panama? Dude, I was just taking a trip to Panama. That's all that was going on there.
Go ahead, Kevin.
So you mentioned hand count audits in Arizona. I've noticed that the hand count audit in Arizona always occurs before the ballots are counted.
Yes, before they're even at the MedTech.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yeah. No. This is
guys. I've administered the hand count.
I have your tweets say, well, not you necessarily, but I have the tweets saying that we've passed the audit, and then like 2 days later, we're still counting ballots.
Correct. Thank you. That is a good distinction. It is not after we have been tabulating. We've been tabulating for a while. Most of the results are tabulated. 100% of the results are not tabulated because state statute requires that we do it the weekend after Tuesday election day. As you all know, and as the national world knows, that like Arizona's elections sometimes are not fully tabulated by the Saturday and Sunday, and that's
they're called before then, though.
They're often called.
Yeah.
Your estimation,
17 seconds of the polls closing.
Maybe in your estimation,
I made that number up, but it was very close.
Too soon. But just like the national networks will call a race, but obviously there's still tabulation going on. But what's going on in the intervening days is that the political party chair people will select batches of ballots and they'll point those out, and those results from the tabulators will be sealed, and those boxes of already tabulated ballots set aside. Then on that weekend after Tuesday election day, the political parties, their appointed personnel, open those boxes, and then they do a hand count of those selected boxes, make sure it matches the machine count. So this is not a 100%, obviously, hand count audit. And yes, there is still some tabulation going on while the hand count audit is being done. But those are real ballots that have been.
Yeah, I understand that, but the whole concept of a risk limiting audit is to pull a random sample from an entire universe of ballots. And if you're not done tabulating, you're not pulling from the entire universe. And the problem I have here, and again, I'm not saying that this happened, but there is the possibility it happens, because in Maricopa County, what do you guys do? Mail-in ballots are stored at a private third-party contractor, and they're shipping them in. And we have the testimony from the Giuliani hearings from Jan Bryant, which I've never heard disputed, that ballots were coming in for 10 days after the election in 2020. Truckloads of ballots from Runbeck coming in for 10 days after the election, all day. And so the problem is you guys say it's a risk limiting audit, but you're not even done with the tabulating yet. Sorry.
No, sorry, I just had to give my trash. The team's coming in here. So yes, and I don't want to pretend that it is a risk limiting audit in Arizona. That is not what it is in Arizona. In Arizona, it's a percentage audit of a randomly selected percentage of the ballots that have been tabulated to that point. Correct.
But isn't that the concept of risk limiting audit until you get
no, sorry, we don't have a risk.
We don't have
a risk limiting audit in Arizona. We have a percentage random selection from the political parties hand count audit.
Since we've only got a few minutes left and the door was open to Runbeck, can I ask about Runbeck contracts really quickly? And this is specific to Arizona.
Well, there are a few major election printers in the United States. For instance, CannCon is one, Runbeck is one. Runbeck, my county, and most of the 15 counties in Arizona use Runbeck because it's a homegrown Arizona company. It's been a partner to Maricopa County since 1980s.
Is it sole source?
No, it is not.
So you have competitive Runbeck contract. You actually put it out to bid, and it's competitive in Arizona.
Yeah, so like I said, CannCon was another one that was interested in it.
But you actually so in Colorado, we waive the competitive requirements. It's sole source, and the reasoning for that is it's hyper specialized. It's an incredibly specialized software that our elections depend upon.
Yep.
Is that not the case in Arizona?
So it's not the case for this particular contract. There are some sole source contracts. Those, of course, have to be done according to procurement rules, both county and state procurement rules. But yes, there are such things as sole source contracts. And the reason that you gave is one of the off-cited reasons.
But that's not a reason for Maricopa's relationship with Runbeck.
No.
It's not Runbeck. Whatever you're using with Runbeck is not a hyper specialized application.
The only thing that we used during my time there was Runbeck. We would send the voter files to Runbeck. They would print ballots in return envelopes and exterior envelopes for all of those materials. and then we would take them to the post office. Voters would mail them back to the post office, or they would drop them off at, drop boxes or at voting locations. We pick them up, we take them to Runbeck, and we run them through this Agilis machine, which is the thing that captures an image of the exterior of the return envelope and scans the barcode such that we can track the ballot. And then they would stay at Runbeck in their sealed envelopes until we have done signature verification. And then we would go pick them up, bring them to our facility, have bipartisan teams slice them open and take out the physical paper ballots.
So that's the role of Runbeck is more than just a printer, then, right?
Run back and forth.
But they're playing in the Arizona election, Maricopa election. They're playing more than they're not just printing the ballots. They're playing at least a bit of an administration role.
So we're using their Agilis scanner and image capture,
and you're using them to store your ballots, right? You're storing them at Runbeck.
Store the sealed envelopes, correct?
Which have ballots in them.
Correct.
So when Shelby Bush and the Arizona Alliance people tried to get visibility to see what was happening on the loading dock of Runbeck, the county, Maricopa County, gave the answer that, well, it's just like the UPS store. They're not playing any, major role. They're not acting as an arm of the government, essentially, right? I'm not using the terms correctly, but they're just like the UPS store is what the county said. And then there was, so there is no camera on that loading dock. There is no ability to see what was happening. And of course, in 2022, that whole drawer 3 thing happened. So probably a lot more ballots were going that way and being handled in ways because they had to be scanned there, right? Not just the envelopes, but the actual ballots.
Yeah, I'm just going to pause for a second. And that was obviously a lot. And some of those things are a little bit, I guess they're tangential, but go off in a different direction. Well,
you're really behaving.
Yeah, it's totally not related to Georgia. It's the question that I've wanted to ask you for a very long time.
That's fine. Like I said, I'm back in the question answering, hopefully, or at least giving you my answers. I realize that, I see the chat enough to know that all my answers are not satisfactory to every one of your listeners. So the UPS argument, that was for the purpose of a public records request. So as you all know, because you've made a whole bunch of public records requests, if you requested any of my emails that were when I was in office, I would have had to have produced them under Arizona records law. Yeah. Now, some people, including Shelby, I guess, maybe, said that we should be able to make requests for emails between Runbeck employees. And Runbeck said, no. We are not a government entity. We are a government contractor. And ultimately, the court sided with Runbeck on that particular issue. Now, as far as observers at Runbeck, we did allow party observers at Runbeck so that they could be seeing the ballots come in when we drop them off from our central facility and then pick them up from our central facility. So yes, political party observers, no to public records requests to Runbeck.
And public records requests, including getting the video of the loading dock at Runbeck, where
I think that was the disputed.
That was the disputed one. It wasn't emails; it was a video of the ballots during the process of their being tabulated at Runbeck, and that is, that raises, and Brian, I'll stop. I promise after this one. Going back to the Maricopa audit. Cyber Ninjas and Doug Logan, it was determined, well, yeah, they are subject to open records requests because they were playing this role in the Senate ordered audit. They were playing this role, right? So we have to give that, they have to comply. Yeah. But Runbeck, who you've described, is playing a government role in our elections. They don't. What is that standard about?
So it's a sort of interesting little legal question, because that's exactly what was alleged in the Runbeck case, was that, hey, you guys said the Cyber Ninjas, And so what the court found was that the Arizona State Senate had wholly outsourced its governing responsibilities to the cyber ninjas to the point that they weren't even there. Whereas the county of Maricopa County and other counties in Arizona were using Runbeck as a contractor for specific services, and therefore they were still a contractor, not subject to Arizona records law, which I see from your face that you take issue with that rule.
I have a follow-up. So from a legal standpoint, when drawer 3 happens in Maricopa and we have to shift and change and we've got to take these things to Runbeck because we can't scan them where we're at, we got to scan them somewhere else, that doesn't change the relationship between the just a contractor, just like the UPS store.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're actually doing the function of the county.
So
that
no,
doesn't
They didn't
change
scan
it?
the ballots. Runbeck can scan them.
Yeah.
They're not. Only mail ballot packets go to Runbeck.
But I'm specifically talking about drawer 3 in 2022.
Correct. So those are
their role shifted.
No,
they didn't scan the ballots for those. Ash.
Okay.
They moved them back to McTech or MC.
Okay.
Right. McTech is what we call it. So yeah, so those were just ballots that were not in an envelope, that were not able to be read by the mini scanners at the voting location, and so therefore the county brought them back to the central facility to be scanned by the central count tabulators. So I think that's probably a bit far afield. Brian, I'm sorry I took up more of your time. My wife's going to be a little bit disappointed in me.
No. We can land this here. Just real quick, if we send you over some of the other information that we kind of talked about here, would you like to come back on in a few weeks and discuss this further?
Yeah. Sounds good. As you taught me how to say it, my DMs are open.
do you let me ask you this. Did your opinion on how the election in Fulton County was administratively run, has it changed at all after having this discussion?
My opinion as to what was being alleged is I want to sort of better understand that. My opinion as to the veracity, the ultimate veracity of who won the 2020 election in Georgia, that's unchanged.
Okay. All right. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us,
guys. Oh, and lastly, I wanted to say How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days is a great movie. So don't ever back away from that. I watched that and I was like, you know what? If enough guys weren't standing up for him, not that I'm the model of masculinity, but I think it's a great movie.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I think it's a great movie too, but I'm a woman. So.
All right. I'm going to check out here. You guys enjoy the rest of your show, and thanks for having me.
Appreciate the time.
Thanks for being here.
All right. So there we have it, Kevin. Want to thank you as well for coming on, and hopefully we'll talk after. I know my phone's been blowing up. So many people wanted me to ask, certain questions and everything else, but we kind of had to keep it,
request of people to come on and ask their own questions.
Yeah. People are like, we can't do that. We can't do that, but we will. I'll talk to him. We'll try and get him back on again, because I think when he actually sees all of this,
huge props to him for showing up. And
huge props. He came into the Viper's Den. Yeah. Like I said, we do not have a chat that has any love for Stephen Richer, and he came on. And again, he's the first person I've seen that has gone on to a show like ours, or and I'm saying like ours, meaning others as well.
There's no show like ours. No. What are you talking about?
But nobody will do what he's done. I've asked other shows, liberal election fraud shows, that Jennifer or whatever it was, she won't come on. I've asked a bunch of people, they don't want to come on.
You talking about Jennifer Barfield?
No, not her.
The one that was at DEF CON. You're talking about that DEF CON chick, right?
Yeah, she was the one that was at DEF CON, this most recent DEF CON, and talking about.
I don't think I cursed at all.
Trump stole 2024. No, you didn't. I'm proud of you.
Brian told me I couldn't curse.
Yeah, I think he was proverbially kicking you under the table. Most of this.
Clay's giving me shit in the chat. I was soft. I was asking questions. That's it. Asking all.
Yeah. No, but props to him for showing up.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All right, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
we are going to close out we're going to close out the show here, but thank you. I do real quick for everybody watching. One of the things that we talked about through the show is the work that Kevin, David, all these other folks have done. And we don't have financing on this end of the election spectrum, right? All the financing is on registering as many people as we can, because, that's how they're going to steal the elections. That's how they're going to, do their shenanigans. And so they get funded, whether it's through NGOs or actual grassroots, which absolutely not through grassroots. So, Kevin, what is the Give, Send, Go for election oversight group?
Oh my goodness.
I know it. I'll say it. It's givesendgo.com/election oversight. So if you guys can jump over there, $5-10, whatever. Kevin has been working his ass off for 4 years. I work with him all the time. I mean, we talk probably 2 or 3 times a week at minimum, sometimes just to see what each other's working on and that kind of thing. So I can vouch that he's one of the hardest working, if not the hardest working guy in investigating 2020 and beyond. So givesendgo.com/election oversight if you guys can. And Kevin, I'll let you give your closing thoughts here, man.
I appreciate that, brother. Brian, I can't thank you enough for the past 5 years. You've been just outstanding outstanding support and help, and good friend. Appreciate you. And appreciate you too, Ash. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for answering my stupid questions too. Appreciate
Nothing
it.
stupid. Fulton County stupid. That's about it.
Awesome.
All right, Kevin. Here, brother.
Yeah, we'll talk to you soon, Kevin.
All right. Appreciate the time.
All right. We have one more sponsor.
Oh, yes, we do. And you want to talk about Van Man?
Sure.
I'll talk about Van Man.
Okay.
You guys know about Van Man taking down big toothpaste with their all-natural oral care, right? Well, it's the perfect time to grab the dental care bundle gift. Van Man's tooth powders loaded with minerals like eggshell and bone and combined with pulling oils and peppermint aloe mouth rinse. It's truly the ultimate fluoride-free dental hygiene bundle that saves you 25% off the individual prices. And the van never stops. Introducing Van Man's Pearl Eye Cream and Sweet Onion Shampoo. Head on over to badlandsmedia.tv/vanman to see what's new. Again, that's badlandsmedia.tv/vanman. All right. And let's jump into some. Do we have any Rumble rants? I think we had a couple.
Oh, yeah.
We do have a couple here.
I have them pulled in. You want me to read them?
Yeah, sure. Well, I was going to.
Trumpet says, keep fighting the good fight, guys. Appreciate you. Thank you. And Huck Fillery says, I didn't hear CannCon say 100%, so here's a Huck buck.
100%. Appreciate it, brother.
Or I heard you try to throw that off on
Dude.
John being
he's
100%.
totally the bigger 100% guy. He says that way more than I do. Maybe Gordon kind of says it a lot too.
I say it a lot. I actually said it a couple of times tonight in the chat. Some people would say something, I just respond with 100%. So
that's my favorite. That's my favorite little emoji is the 100 with the underlines. So
yeah, same.
All right, guys. Well, again, thank you guys all so much for tuning in. Share this show out. Got to give a massive props to Stephen Richer for coming on. Don't agree whatsoever with his assessment. I think that anybody that could come away from this show after tonight thinking that there isn't legitimate questions of the legitimacy of quote unquote Joe Biden's election win in Georgia, I just don't understand it. But
well, that's kind of thing too. The thing at the end there, he says, nothing changed my mind about the winner of the election, the 2020 election in Georgia. Well, during the course of this discussion, he found out that several of his underlying assumptions were not correct. And yet, by the end of it, we're still not going to change our mind. I mean, I do think that there is a big part of that is legal liability. We can't relitigate 2020 for a lot of these people because they put it all on the line for 2020 and they'll never admit it. But we're talking about a margin of 11,000, just under 12,000 votes and at least 315,000 votes in question. As I was saying before my sound went out, half that margin is found and admitted to in one county, and your confidence level doesn't shift at all. That to me is intellectually dishonest. And we'll see. We'll see what happens.
And one of the things that we don't really factor into what we talked about, even going beyond just whether or not this is information that would prove that President Trump won that election, they prosecuted people over questioning this, right? There were people that legitimately called this stuff out, and they put them, through the ringer. 16 or 19 in Georgia in the RICO case, the Fannie Willis RICO case. Right. They prosecuted people on this. And you got, Jack Smith came out. I'm sure you saw the clip today where Jack Smith said, absolutely not. This is not free speech to call out election fraud and interfere.
Oh, I'd like to meet him in a dark alley. I would nag the shit out of him.
Say that. Don't say that. You're going to get blacklisted now if you're not already.
I'm a pacifist, so it's not a violent threat. It's a threat to corner you in an alley and nag you until you understand just how wrong you are. That's what I meant.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, again, thank you.
One more rant. ZBM says, got in late. Who was Stephen Richer? Loved this show, and hopefully Stephen will come around. Stephen Richer was the Maricopa County clerk and recorder, the chief election officer of Maricopa County from 2020 to 2025, beginning of 2025, right?
Beginning 2024.
I thought he was elected in 2020. He said
he was, but
no, he left office in the beginning of 2025. He corrected me of that in the beginning. Yeah,
correct.
Yeah, but ZBM, he showed up first of all, which that's more than we can say for a lot of the other election related, certainly from fraud deniers won't show on this show, and Stephen Richer showed up, so we give him huge props for that. And maybe he'll come back and we can talk about some of these other things like the Maricopa audit in more detail.
Fitty Shrimp in the chat says too many naggers, and I was going to play the South Park clip on Wheel of Fortune, the clip.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if I should say it.
Yeah, but no. Right. Thank you everybody for watching. Please hit the like button. I will be on OnlyLands later. I don't know if you'll be on OnlyLands later. No, probably not. Okay. But yeah, we'll see you guys.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.